The human mind is capable of incredible empathy, connection, and understanding, but it also possesses mechanisms that can lead to profound disconnection, sometimes with devastating consequences. One such mechanism is dehumanization, a concept often discussed, yet frequently misunderstood. We've all heard the term, often in the context of historical atrocities, like the Holocaust or the Rwandan genocide, where groups were systematically stripped of their humanity. But what exactly is dehumanization? And perhaps more importantly, what are the common myths surrounding it that prevent us from truly understanding its insidious power? Dehumanization isn't just prejudice or dislike. It's a potent psychological process where individuals or entire groups are perceived as less than human, pushed outside the boundaries of moral concern. This process enables us to justify mistreatment, exploitation, violence, and even extermination, making these actions seem, to the perpetrator, logical, necessary, or even morally correct. Understanding its true nature is not just an academic exercise, it's a critical step in fostering a more humane society. Today, we're going to gently peel back the layers of these misunderstandings, exploring what dehumanization truly is and what it is not. Let's dive into some of the most pervasive myths that cloud our understanding of this complex phenomenon. Myth number 1. Many believe that dehumanization is a literal denial that another person or group is human at all, the idea that someone genuinely perceives another human being as a walking, talking object or animal, completely devoid of any human essence. However, this isn't quite accurate. As scholars like David Livingston Smith highlight, it's more often a less than human view. It's about perceiving others as inferior, degenerate, or primitive, rather than completely non-human. Think of it less as seeing a table where a person should be, and more like seeing a person who is fundamentally flawed, lacking essential human qualities like rationality, civility, warmth, or the capacity for complex emotions. This nuanced distinction is crucial. When Tutsis were called cockroaches during the Rwandan genocide, it wasn't that the perpetrators literally believed them to be insects, but rather that they were stripped of the moral status afforded to humans, reducing them to pests deserving of eradication. They were still seen as agents, capable of movement and causing problems, but crucially, their human worth was denied. This brings us to myth number 2, the long-held belief that dehumanization primarily functions to promote what's called moral disengagement. The idea here is that if you see someone as less than human, you simply stop considering them within your moral framework. You don't feel guilt or responsibility for harming them because they don't count morally. While Albert Bandura's concept of moral disengagement is powerful and relevant in many contexts, current research, particularly from scholars like Noor Kately and Emile Bruneau, offers a more complex view. Critics argue that dehumanizers are often intensely morally engaged, but in a distorted way. They don't just ignore their victims, they perceive them as evil, demonic, dangerous, or fundamentally deserving of punishment. Think of it, if you genuinely believe a group poses an existential threat, or that they are inherently malevolent, your actions against them are driven by a twisted sense of justice, or a moral imperative to protect your own group. They are judged, condemned, and punished, not simply morally overlooked. This reframe highlights a terrifying aspect. Sometimes the most extreme acts are committed not out of apathy, but out of a misguided, fervent, even righteous sense of moral conviction.
Let's move to myth number 3, that dehumanizing language, calling people animals, vermin, or machines, is just mere rhetoric or a strong insult, not truly reflecting actual perception. We often dismiss harsh words as just that, words, believing they don't really change how we see others. However, research strongly indicates that such language is far from benign. It can genuinely reflect or foster a perception of the target as subhuman, solidifying negative views and making it easier to inflict harm. When a political leader consistently refers to a specific group as an infestation or rats, it's not just a colorful metaphor. It primes the audience to perceive that group through an animalistic lens, denying them uniquely human qualities like rationality, civility, or self-control. This animalistic dehumanization is what scholar Nick Haslam has extensively researched. Similarly, mechanistic dehumanization portrays people as objects or machines, denying warmth, emotion, or individuality. Such language normalizes and legitimizes the perception of the other as less deserving of human rights and dignity, creating a pathway from words to systemic discrimination and even violence. Our fourth myth suggests that dehumanization is simply another term for general prejudice, stereotyping, or dislike. It's easy to conflate these terms, assuming they're all just different shades of negativity. But studies show that dehumanization is a distinct psychological phenomenon, even having unique neural correlates in the brain. It can occur independently of explicit dislike. You might feel indifferent to a group, yet still implicitly deny them certain uniquely human emotions. This subtle form is known as inferiority. For example, you might attribute basic, non-uniquely human emotions like happiness or anger to an outgroup, but deny them more complex, secondary emotions unique to humans, such as hope, love, shame, or nostalgia. This makes the outgroup seem less complex, less fully developed, and therefore subtly less human, even without overt hostility or prejudice. It's not just about disliking someone, it's about altering their very essence in your mind, diminishing their capacity for rich human experience. Finally, let's address myth number 5, that dehumanization is a binary process where victims are seen as entirely non-human, an absolute switch from human to object or beast. In reality, the process is far more nuanced, often involving what scholars call the paradoxes of dehumanization. If victims were truly seen as absolute non-humans, like rocks or inanimate objects, it would be difficult to explain why dehumanized groups are still subjected to intense moralized judgments, hatred, and severe punishments. You don't punish a rock for being a rock, nor do you feel hatred for a machine. This paradox is resolved by understanding that real-world dehumanization is rarely absolute. Instead, victims are typically seen as inferior, degenerate, or primitive, human enough to be blamed, to be hated, to be perceived as a threat, and to be punished severely, but critically, not human enough to deserve empathy, respect, or basic rights. This partial, graded denial of humanity is what makes dehumanization so insidiously effective and so difficult to fully grasp. It allows for both contempt and punishment to coexist. So, what have we learned from debunking these myths? Dehumanization is not a simplistic act of literally denying someone's humanity. It's a complex, often subtle psychological process where individuals are perceived as less than human, making them targets for moral exclusion and mistreatment. It's not just about disengagement. It can stem from a twisted sense of moral righteousness. The language we use, even if dismissed as just rhetoric, has tangible power to shape perception and facilitate harm. And critically, it's not a binary switch, but a spectrum where victims are seen as flawed enough to be condemned, yet not human enough to be protected.
Understanding these nuances is crucial in our world today. From historical atrocities like U.S. slavery, where enslaved people were systematically animalized, to contemporary conflicts, the echoes of dehumanizing language and thought patterns are disturbingly persistent. The work of scholars like Hannah Arendt, with her concept of the banality of evil, reminds us that extreme evil can be carried out through processes that implicitly facilitate dehumanization. By recognizing its true nature, by challenging these pervasive myths, we can become more discerning observers and more compassionate participants in our shared human experience. The ongoing relevance of dehumanization in modern discourse, such as that often seen in conflicts around the world, highlights the continuous need for study and public awareness. By staying informed and cultivating an awareness of these psychological mechanisms, we empower ourselves to resist the currents that threaten to pull us towards division and indifference. Let's strive to see the full humanity in every individual, always.